Welcome back, America. We're back with retired Colonel Richard Kemp. Among his many career stop-offs was Afghanistan as commander of British forces. Colonel Kemp, my question to you is, given what's taken place now in Afghanistan and it's ongoing, and assuming that Joe Biden stays on the same course, what are the consequences for the United States, Britain, NATO, the free world, and that area of the world now?
I think the consequences of what's just happened and what's still happening are absolutely devastating for the whole of the Western world. I mentioned earlier the catastrophic effect on NATO. NATO is a very important military alliance. Many presidents have criticised it for not pulling its weight, of the European member states in particular, and they're right to do so. But President Biden has just completely destroyed its credibility, totally destroyed it. Single-handed. And, you know, what we face now is a terrorist threat coming out of Afghanistan that is greater than the terrorist threat before 9/11. Jihadists around the world have been celebrating the events, and not least the president, not that he's a jihadist, but the president of Pakistan, Imran Khan, who himself celebrated it. He should be celebrating because Pakistan significantly funded the Taliban throughout the campaign, while at the same time being paid vast amounts of money by America and Britain. But they're celebrating around the world. Hamas in Gaza are celebrating what's happening here. And they will be re-energized. They will see that their recruitment has been boosted. They will be reinvigorated, and they will launch attacks around the world against our countries, as they did really when they were being inspired by the Islamic State. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are strong in Afghanistan at the moment. Al-Qaeda fought alongside the Taliban in recent battles. They will operate freely. It doesn't matter what the Taliban say to you. They will allow the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State to operate freely there. And they can operate more freely than they could before 9/11 because they know there's no fear of Western intervention now. That's finished. That's history. That's not going to happen again. They know that, and so they'll be even bolder than before. And jihadists from around the world will flock into Afghanistan to train, prepare, and launch attacks against the West. So the state of the terrorist threat is higher than it was at the height of the Islamic State's power when they controlled large parts of Syria and of Iraq. That's just one aspect of the situation. There's no one really who is celebrating this situation more than Russia and China. They're the greatest cheerleaders for what's happened. They've helped to bring it about, but they now will be emboldened themselves. They've done a great deal against the West, a huge amount against the West in the past. They now will look at the deterrent that the United States used to present, and they will see that they've got pretty much an open field to do almost whatever they like. And those countries that we had hoped to entice onto our side into the Western sphere, those countries will say, why would we do that? These people are clearly fair weather friends. We can't rely on them. We can't trust them. And they will see Russia and China as being the more reliable ally than any country in the West. And so that will be extremely damaging for our ability to wield power. And yet that was one of the reasons that President Biden gave for pulling out of Afghanistan, that he would focus more effort, he'd be able to focus more effort on confronting China and Russia. Well, this is completely the reverse of what he expected to happen. There's so many other implications that I could go through. I won't go through them all because I think those are probably the most severe implications. We're going to see China holding the upper hand over Afghanistan now, together with Pakistan, and they will use their influence together with Russia and Iran in Afghanistan. They will use that influence not only to enrich themselves by plundering Afghanistani minerals and resources, but by using what they have there to hit against the West. So the whole world just became vastly more dangerous. The US government, President Biden humiliated the United States. He humiliated the United States Army. In my opinion, and I don't say this lightly, and I've never said it about anybody else, any other leader in this position, people have been talking about impeaching President Biden. I don't believe President Biden should be impeached. He's the commander-in-chief of the US Armed Forces, who's just essentially surrendered to the Taliban. He shouldn't be impeached. He should be court-martialed for betraying the United States of America and the United States Armed Forces.
Now, Colonel Kemp, I want to ask you a couple of questions here. If you're Taiwan now, or you're Ukraine, dealing with Russia, or you're Israel, dealing with Iran and a whole host of terrorists, and you've been relying on the United States as an ally, you have a lot to worry about now, don't you?
You have a lot to worry about, and the president of Taiwan made a statement in which she said that that we now need, in the light of what's been going on in Afghanistan, we need now to look at strengthening our own defensive efforts. And that's very telling in itself. Of course they should be defending themselves, but they are not capable of defending themselves against China. They do need the United States, and they're now wondering if they've got the United States. The same applies for, as you say, for Ukraine. Ukraine is in grave danger. Israel, other Gulf states in the Middle East are in grave danger, because not only has President Biden surrendered to the Taliban, he's also been appeasing Iran and encouraging Iran to get back into the nuclear deal that threatens all countries in the Middle East and that has led to an arms race in the Middle East. And those countries are not any longer relying on the US. They can't rely on the United States. And so I think there's it leads us to a very, very shaky and unstable situation, because they recognize that Iran, as much as they're afraid, Iran is emboldened. Iran has interests in Afghanistan anyway, but they're also emboldened by the weakness they've seen in the United States. And that will encourage them to be even more aggressive in the region. They will demand more on the JCPOA and the nuclear deal. They will push harder to destroy Israel by setting up bases of attack in Syria, by reinforcing their presence in Lebanon. They will be working harder yet against Saudi Arabia, which they've been at war with, a proxy war via Yemen, and they will re-energize their aggression across the region. We will see great danger from Iran, as well as other countries that are no longer deterred by the United States.
We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.